Now let's get to it. You did just start that.
Yes, I did just start. When you said okay.
Good morning. Yay. More peoples. What we want to do this morning is, I guess, pretty much kind of just talk about voice acting and maybe any questions you might have related to what I do, whether it be in voice acting or music or video and film, audio recording, graphic design, whatever. And we'll talk for a couple hours, and then if anyone has anything else they'd like me to sign or anything like that, we can do that. And then I believe there's a Subasa marathon. So, who's got some questions? Yes.
Do you ever talk to other people who voice act with you in the same show? Do you do things at the same time? Do you see them while they're doing it?
No, in fact, I was telling some people last week at the anime convention in San Francisco, we could go for an entire show and never meet the people that are in the show with us. How many of you saw Dean Angel? How many of you watched the commentary with me and Kevin Korn in the first disc? Well, one of the funny things about the commentary was that I just kept making comments about how this is the first time I'd ever met Kevin. We had done several shows together. I mean, I knew who he was. I knew he was this younger kid that was working at ADV. I'd heard his voice on and off in different shows that I'd done, but I'd never met him. And here we were doing Dean Angel, and I was dark to his Daisuke, and I still had never met him. And then David Williams asked us to do a commentary, and sitting in the studio with him doing the commentary was the first time I'd ever met him. And so we just had a blast, and it was so much fun. But you could go an entire show or multiple shows and never meet the people that you work with. There are people, I guess probably from Full Metal, even, that I have not met personally. But when you go to conventions and maybe in the halls of the studios as you're leaving and someone's coming in, or somebody's working in another booth on something, or another studio on something else, you happen to be there. Last week, I was up at Funimation, and Travis was there. He had come in from LA to work on something. Laura Bailey was there. She'd come in to work on something. Troy Baker was there. Sonny Strait was in. Mike McFarlane was there. Colleen was there. Caitlin was there. Obviously, these are all people that were in Full Metal anyway, but they're working on other things, and so it was great to see them. And of course, when we do conventions together, we really enjoy those a lot because it's really neat. I love to get to do cons with Aaron. Aaron Dismuke played my little brother, and I consider him like a little brother, and I think he probably feels the same way about me. We mess around with each other, and we're like big and little brother, and so I get a kick out of doing conventions with him. But no, you could go an entire series, more than one, without ever meeting people. The conventions are our best opportunity to interact and become friends with each other. Caitlin and I are very close, mostly because actually she had just started with Funimation when she got cast as Winry. And I met her at a convention, and she just came running up and went, "Oh my gosh, I'm Caitlin Glass, and we're working on Full Metal, and I'm playing Winry," and we just got to talking, and we found that we had a lot of things in common, and became friends. And when she comes to Houston to work, she'll stay at my place, and we'll get dinner and stuff when I go up to Dallas to work. And so you build some really great friendships with people, but you never work with them at the same time. All the recordings are always done one at a time, because that's the only way it could be. And if you're interested in hearing more about that, you want me to tell you about that? The Japanese record as a group. They go in, and the whole cast goes in, and they literally go in a big studio room, and they'll have 3 plasma screens set up on the wall, and then they'll have 3 or 4 or 5 microphones on stands. And they will have a very choreographed plan on how certain actors will stand behind certain mics with their scripts, and they'll step up to the mic and they'll do their line, and over here, and they'll step back, and somebody will step in, and they'll record the whole episode like Reader's Theater style. But you see, they can do that because the animation is not finished. They do that mostly to storyboards. They don't have to match any mouth flaps. They just have to perform the lines. When we get the shows are done. The animation is done. In fact, one of the parts of the contract is you don't change the animation. You can't change it. Like if you want it to go longer so you can say something else, you know, you're not allowed. That's just part of the deal. And so it is our responsibility not only to act the roles, but now we have to match the mouth movements perfectly. Well, what are the odds that you're going to get 10 people in there and they're all going to hit every line perfectly? Impossible. Physically impossible. Very rarely do we ever even get a line on the first take. Usually when you do it, you'll go, okay, I need to slow it down a little bit. Or there's a pause right here. Or like we talked about last night, need to change this line here at the end and make it 2 syllables longer or 1 syllable longer. And so you work it until you get it right. But you almost never get a line on the first take. And so the idea that you could get the whole cast in there and everybody would get their line perfectly would never happen. So we have to record alone. But if you think about it now in hindsight, if you did not know that, if that's the first time you've heard that, think about that in hindsight and think, wow, all of those powerful, dramatic, emotional scenes where people are talking to each other, not actually talking to each other. There is no dialogue, no conversation. All of those emotional scenes between Ed and Al, Aaron may have recorded 3 weeks earlier. So when I go in, I got to sound like I'm talking to him. And it's interesting because there are subtleties in the way you talk that sounds like you're responding to someone as opposed to just saying the line. And little things like that help create the illusion of conversation between two people. Yeah.
You say you can't change anything, but how does that work for censorship? Because
I knew that. Okay. That's one of the exceptions for television.
Okay.
And again, all you're doing, you're omitting. You may be omitting blood or decapitation or nudity or something. You may be omitting it or airbrushing it somehow for television. And that's written into the contract. I mean, the Japanese understand that it's to their advantage that a show gets on television. Because ultimately they will make more money because more people will see it, ipso facto, you know, do what you need to do to get it on television in most cases. You know what, a lot of people, this is a common misconception, and let me clear this up. A lot of people write Funimation. They're like, you jerks, I can't believe you're cutting these shows up. Funimation doesn't cut anything. The studios don't cut anything. The television networks make the cuts. Okay? Certain shows, whether it be Dragon Ball Z, or whether it be an ADV show, or whether it be Bleach or Naruto, it doesn't matter. The studios make the show in its entirety. They make it completely as it was created in Japan. And then they hand it off to the television network, who will then go, we need to cut this, or whatever. So Funimation, my point is Funimation, ADV, these studios, they're not responsible for the cuts. It's not them who randomly change or cut or omit things. And as you know, if you buy a show that goes direct to DVD, there usually aren't any edits. It's only the stuff that goes to television, because the television stuff has to abide by a different set of standards because it's, you know, publicly accessible on television to all different ages. Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z is a perfect example. How come they release the VHS tapes or DVDs as cut and uncut from Funimation?
Well, if you're a parent,
Well, I mean, so does
if you're a parent, you want to buy your kid Dragon Ball Z, but you don't.
Well,
your kid's
I
10.
understand that,
That's why they make them available in cut and uncut.
So Funimation releases it to the TV studio. The TV studio cuts it and then releases it to.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't clear. The TV studio doesn't physically cut.
Okay.
The TV studio says, cut this,
Okay.
cut that, cut this. And Funimation will make the changes, but it's not Funimation. It's not their idea. It's not them doing it. It's not them randomly saying, we're going to cut this part. They don't edit shows. They do what they're required to do, and they do the bare minimum. You guys, I remember when Full Metal started, I can only think of one thing, and maybe there's more, but I can only think of one thing that was cut in Full Metal, and it wasn't that big a deal.